Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to Conscious Tea. My guest in the studio today is Rachael Hemsi. Hi, Rachael.
Hello.
And Rachael is director of OneTaste in Europe, an organisation that teaches female orgasm through the practice of orgasmic meditation. And in today's interview, we're going to really explore the on practice, what it is, and how it can support you in your path in your life. So, Rachael, maybe just a good starting point is, what is orgasmic meditation?
That's a good question. So it's a 15-minute partnered practice. You cannot do it yourself. We say you can't tickle yourself in the same way you can't take yourself out of control, right? So it's a 15-minute partnered practice. All the women want to know if you can do it by yourself. That where
all the men are happy they can't.
right. There's a stroker and a strokee. And so the stroker will stroke a woman's clitoris in her upper left-hand quadrant for 15 minutes with about the pressure you would stroke your eyelid in a light up, down, up, down, up, down motion. And it really is a shared practice. So it's two people sharing the energy between them. And it's always 15 minutes. And it is really done like a practice. So like yoga for your sex life, we would say.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to come into some more details of the practice and how it works. But I'm curious to hear a bit more about your background. So how did you get into this practice? A bit about maybe your life kind of before you came to the practice.
That's a great question. Let's see. So I grew up in New York in a Gurdjieff community, actually. And so I kind of always had some sense of spirituality of some sort, although it was kind of like you could choose what you wanted to or not. And then I became a social worker. I moved to San Francisco and I was a social worker. I worked with teenage moms for about 8 years, and that was kind of my thing. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the world and how I'm going to contribite or do whatever it is I'm meant to do on this earth, right? And then I got really burnt out. And about 8 years in, I showed up at work and had some horrible stuff had happened and to one of my clients and their baby, and I couldn't do it anymore. And so I actually went out on disability, and I kind of sat around and stared at the walls for a while.
You were physically burnt out or emotionally or both?
I think it was probably emotionally. It was just like I would show up to work on Wednesday and I'd start crying, and on Thursday I'd be crying. They'd send me home on Friday, be totally fine by Sunday, and this thing, it happened for about 3 weeks, and I was like, oh, I can't quite do this anymore.
Like something's trying to tell you something,
yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, I think I was just full of, that was like the amount of...
Full of everyone else's stuff.
Yeah, and it felt like as a social worker, it felt like I was like giving away pieces of my soul that I needed, and I was just like, wow. And so I didn't really know what I was going to do, and I spent a couple months just like staring at walls, and I'd go to the park or read a book, I didn't really know. And then I spent a year traveling around the world, and I spent 6 months in India, and I went to Vietnam and Cambodia and Eastern Europe, and so I spent a year traveling, and it really like kind of like reset me in a way, and I thought, okay, what's the next thing that I'm going to do? And I really didn't know, and I applied to graduate school, and I didn't really want to go to graduate school, but I didn't know what else to do. Sure. And I was working in a coffee house, and so it was kind of like this time of exploration.
To find a path, but it wasn't revealing
itself.
I
was just trying to find what the next thing was. Like I knew I had traveled, and I had found like more leverage or like depth in myself, and I actually at that point started kind of studying Gurdjieff a little bit more and like saying, okay, I'm ready for something, and I wasn't sure what. And then I started thinking like I need to date some. Like I dated in college, and that kind of was an area where I hadn't really looked at. And I had taken some classes. There's something in the States called the Human Awareness Institute, and so I'd taken some of their classes when I was like from about like 22 to 28 or something like that. And actually, I think they have a center in Germany. And so there was a desire around sexuality, always something in there, but nothing had really happened. And so I was kind of like, I was doing online dating with like, OkCupid was smaller at the time, but different things, and it was kind of disastrous. It was like I was on this one site. Can you say a little bit more about? I was on this one site where it was like I was like, oh, I'm just looking for some casual dating, and then people would like send you pictures of their genitalia, right? And you're like, well, that's not quite what I was looking for. Or it was like
the word for men, casual dating.
Right,
it's like I got a whole world.
And then, or it was like people just wanted to get married, and you were on these dates where it was like the same questions everyone was answering, which is, I'm not against marriage, but I was looking for just, some deeper intimacy as well.
Casual sex and marriage.
Right,
Kind
exactly.
of a big territory between them.
And then I had this friend who always knew about like alternative things that were happening, and she said, "Well, you should go check out OneTaste in." And so I went to an evening and I went to an event, and I was like, it's kind of interesting. I thought, well, it's interesting, but it's not quite for me. I'm not quite sure. And there was a woman who she was determined that it was something that I would like. And I'd had relationships with women when I was younger, and then a couple with men, but hadn't really been dating that much with men. And she related to my story. And so she said, okay. So then she said, we're having a party and there's a demonstration of a woman doing the orgasmic meditation process, and you should come see it. And I said, okay, I have no idea what that is, but I should go. And it was funny because I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this party, whatever. And I had about 5 friends who were coming, and they all canceled. And there was just this little quiet voice in the back of my head that said, like, you're going to that party, which, usually I'd be like, I'm just going to stay home. But I just kept saying, okay, I'm going to go to this thing. And so I went, and it was a party, and the people seemed nice enough. And then there was a demonstration of the practice. And I remember my whole body got cold, and I thought I would never do that. And I would definitely never teach that, but my whole body was cold afterwards. And I just remember that so clearly.
And I'm curious, for those that aren't aware, that effectively the demonstration, I'm assuming, involved a lady taking off the bottom part of her clothes.
So, yeah, and someone stroking her clitoris for 15 minutes, or actually at the time it was 30 minutes, so it was a 30-minute demonstration.
So this is the first time you've seen this practice.
Absolutely.
And you were trying to go to a party, and
universe
is like.
I knew there would be this practice at the party,
okay.
But I didn't really realize it was a practice. I didn't know it was called orgasmic meditation. I just, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't realize the intricacies of it that I do now, and it was just like, so I was there, but I knew I wanted to open up my sexuality. Like, I knew that there was something missing, and it was the next thing that really needed to open up. So something was guiding me along the way. And
so there was the something guiding.
Yeah.
Was there also a place of like, holy shit, what's going on? Like, I want to get out of here, or maybe not.
There wasn't really. It was kind of like, it was more like, this is weird.
Okay.
I don't remember thinking I need to leave. More like, this is weird, and I don't know if I would ever do this. And yet my body was really like, it got cold afterwards, and I knew it had been touched in some way, but I wasn't exactly sure what.
Yes.
Or how. And so someone came, and I said, oh my God, like, my body's cold, what's happening? And they said, well, we're doing a class tomorrow. Do you want to come and learn it? And I was like, maybe I do. And I actually had, I was working at a coffee store. I had no money at the time, and I had just the exact amount of cash in my wallet, and I handed it over, and I went to the class the next day. And the way the classes were set up then, and the way we still teach them, is you don't have to decide if you want to do the practice until the afternoon. So you learn all about it, you see another demonstration, you do a bunch of exercises, and then you decide in the afternoon if you want to do the practice. And I remember it was so easy. I was really surprised, but it was so much more natural than I thought. And it was and the practice itself was amazing. It was just and the Nicole, who's the founder of OneTaste, taught all the classes at the time. So she taught the class, and I remember she said, remember that there's enough, because your body's so tight, because it feels good, and then you tighten up, and remember there's enough. And so there were about 5 minutes left, and I remember my whole body relaxed, and I could just really feel what we call orgasm, just moving through your body. And I was touched by something really deep. And at the time, actually, I was training to run a marathon, and I was, and so it happened to be the next day I was training for the long run. So I ran 18 miles, and I got home, and my body was still my heart rate was still going. I still had a lot of energy, which was unusual, right? Like, after 18 miles, you think your body is just, I was a really slow runner too. So it took me 6.5 hours. So I was and the next day, someone from the class called, and she said, how are you doing? And I was like, okay, what's happening? My body is like this. And she goes, oh, your body just got turned on. That's what happens.
And I'm curious, I want to explore that more in a moment, but I'm curious, that first that you did, was it different to other orgasmic experiences you've had in other contexts, or was it the same and different? I'm curious as to what that felt experience was like.
Well, it was with another person in a way that So I had a very hard time. So orgasmic meditation, and when we say orgasm, we don't mean climax,
Yes,
which is when you
yes,
go
yes.
over, right? But I hadn't climaxed with another person. I could easily masturbate and climax, but with another person, it was really difficult. And I had a climax in that first OM, but also just like an intimate connection where it was completely different. It was like my sexual experiences up until then felt like I was in my head hoping for something different, like, would you just move to the left or just do this? And I couldn't quite say anything.
Which I guess is why through masturbation you could orgasm,
Yeah.
because you could deliver what
you can do
you
whatever
needed.
you want.
Right.
Actually, I tended to read a lot of porn when I would masturbate. Like it was like that feeling. And actually, I remember thinking, I would masturbate and I would think one day I'll have my orgasm, and I never knew what that meant. Like, and I thought, like, you're crazy. Like, you don't date that much. You don't really have sex that much. Like, you're nuts. But it was just this thing in the back of my head that was always there. And so, and now, I've been doing this for 8 years, and if I look back, I think like there's something in me that was meant to do this. Like, and I've always known that I was, and it just kind of like,
Sure.
maybe it's the reason when I graduated college, I was like, Mom and Dad, I'm moving to San Francisco, and it's 3,000 miles away. It's it's a couple day. And my mom was like, can't you move somewhere where you know anyone? And I was like, no, I must move to San Francisco. And I think all of my life kind of led to that,
Yes.
for me to find this. So when I look at it that way, it's like, and I think even like not being able to find a relationship for that long meant that I found this, because if I had found a relationship, I would have just fallen into this relationship. And so like all of these things looked like they made sense.
Yeah.
So it was a different experience in my body. It's sexual. It's different than sex. It's definitely changed my sex life. Like sex has become amazing where it wasn't. But that first experience was like, it was like your body got turned on. You could feel more. I remember right afterwards, someone gave me a ride home and they touched just this part, and I think it felt better than some of the sex I'd ever had. It was like you could just feel more. It was like whoa. And I remember right after the OM ended, I sent to my partner, something just awoken in me. Don't let me forget it. Don't let me run away from it, because I tended to be like, whoa, I found something and never go back, And I just remember something is here.
Yeah, and I want to pick up a bit more on what you were saying about you'd run this practice run for the marathon, and like your body's. And when I was preparing for this interview, and I was talking to some friends of mine that have done the practice, and also some friends of mine that know people that do the practice really regularly.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is it about this on practice? Like, there's obviously there's a buzz that's happening within certain kind of subcultures or communities at this point. And a friend of mine I thought put it really well. He said, the women are just turned on.
Right.
It's like like they're in touch with like their sexual energy.
Right.
I was curious to hear more about that, and I guess especially what that's done to your life, like beyond just kind of your sex life and kind of your, I guess, having found a sense of purpose in your life through the work that you're doing, but in your wider life, I'm interested to hear, how does being turned on change your life?
Right. Well, so I was saying before, right, like I was a social worker, and it felt like, okay, I'm giving away pieces of my soul that I need. And I felt like I've always known I'm meant to give in this world, and like meant to love, and that's just part of who I am. I'm kind of like the mom figure, whatever. That's just like it is, right? And I think like as I was a social worker, it was just like sitting on a couch next to someone. That was probably the biggest thing, was just to like have them feel supported. But it felt like I was giving away things I needed, and the oming, it fills you up, and so it's not like, oh, I'm always sexually turned on. Although like I am sexually turned on, like my genitals are moist and they're open, and there's more turn on in there, but my body is more alive, and it's like I took the time to actually fill up. So now when I give, it's like, because it's coming out of my fingertips, and if I don't, I'll go nuts because I'm so full. And so it's like, it's an energizing practice, so it fills you up. And so when your friend said like, oh, the women are just turned on, like, yeah, we're turned on. And yeah, I mean, I think in general, women want to have sex more than men at this point. Like women are we just shut it down. Yeah. Like in our community, in our community, women are having sex, but any woman I notice who starts turning herself on and actually checks in with what her body really wants to have sex a lot, and almost more than men. Like, it's just I think as women don't have sex, we shut it down.
Right. That's my sense. It's like the less a man has sex, the more he wants
right?
sex.
And women are like, well, I just forgot I ever liked that, right? But then once you start having sex, you remember and you want to have a lot more of it. And so, but this feeling of turn on, it's like, it's aliveness. It's just like you, and so sex is not ever out of obligation. It's because it feels good. And so everything in my life feels more energetic and more alive. And I have tons of energy, you know, it's a heating practice. So I have more energy in my body. I have more life. I have like, and the women who I would say have a twinkle in their eye, you know, it's like they have more energy, but there's just life, there's orgasm, there's something is coming out that was stuck inside.
Yes.
And it's a deep power, and women really are like, I think this, you know, the feminine energy is coming into the world, right, is the way I would look at it. And women are bringing that, and the orgasmic meditation is allowing that to open up enough that women can kind of like touch into their sexuality in a way.
Yeah, and let's explore a bit more about the daily practice. So you had this experience, then I guess it became more part of your life.
Yeah.
What does that look like in terms of within the kind of busyness of someone's work life and family life? Like,
right. Well, I called up my mom and I was like, there's this weird practice and these cool group of people, and I want to, you know, I think I'm interested. She said, well, why don't you go check them out a little bit more? So for me, I started out with just, I think I went that week, there were some people who knew the practice, and I went and had a couple ohms that week. And then... and
when you say a couple of ohms, you mean a couple of different partners that you did the practice with?
I did. Yeah. Well, actually, maybe it was 2 partners and 3 different ohms, so it was someone I knew, you know, someone I had... But you can do it, you know, this practice is amazing, so it can be... I coach people who are in monogamous relationships, and they'll never do it with anyone else. Sure. And then there's people who, you know, just... do it with anyone, and you can have a monogamous relationship, you can ohm with many people, you can have open relationships and ohm, so it really is like it can take you wherever you want it to go. And then for me, I was like, wow, there's something here, and so I started ohming a few times a day. That was what I wanted to do, and I got more involved with a community of people who made that possible. But I know people who are like, wow, they're working in central London, and they meet up during their lunch break and they have an ohm. You know, I ohm in the morning, and it's great. So you can go right before work. You can have an ohm at 7 in the morning.
So it's like a morning meditation practice.
Totally.
Right?
I hate having sex in the morning. I love ohming in the morning. So you don't have to like feel like, oh, I'm a morning sex person. It's just like, it really is just like, yoga for your sex life. So the same way, and the one of the things I love about it is it really is like, it's a practice. So you do it the same way as when you don't want to go to the gym and you don't want it right.
That's something I was going to ask you about. It's like, you know, there are often times where it's like, okay, I generally meditate most mornings. It's hard with 2 small children, but I try.
Totally.
And so, yeah, there are many mornings where it's like, I really can't bother. I really need to get into my email. I want to have another half hour sleep or whatever. And there's a kind of discipline to kind of like, right, that's what I do, and there's a reason why, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm curious as to how that meets a kind of, I understand it's a sexual practice that's not sex, but it's like sexually engaging when it's like you don't feel turned on, it's like, how does that work?
It's exactly the same thing. So for me, like, when I don't want to meditate is when I'm really like, Rachel, you got to meditate. Right. On the days where I'm like, oh, I want nothing more than to sit and meditate, it's like, yeah, it's great.
Because you're already plugged in, right?
It's great, but it's not a big deal, right? So I look at ohming exactly the same way, which is like, it's something, so what it's doing is it's heating up your body, and it's also, it's a way you can't hide what you're feeling. You have to feel. So often when I don't want to ohm, it's like someone hurt my feelings, something's happening, and I just don't want to feel it. And I'm like, I'm not in the mood. Or you're like, come on, it's time to ohm. My partner will say, like, it's time to ohm. And I'm like, oh, I hate you. Like, you know, I'm very, very busy. I have to, you don't understand this. This very, very busy thing that I must do, right? Yeah. And then I'll lie down and I'll ohm, and there was something that I didn't want to feel. Right. And so the reason I love it being a daily practice, or even a few times a day if you want it, is that I can't ever like look back and be like, oh, you know, a year ago I shut down to something and I'm just opening it back up. It's like, oh, I keep feeling. And it doesn't, you know, some people are like, well, I don't ever want to push myself to be sexual when I don't want to be. But what you're doing is you're just saying, I'm going to feel, and I'm going to stay open, and I'm going to feel whatever is. And so if you're feeling like, I hate the world, it can be a really hot, angry ohm. it doesn't really matter what you're feeling as long as you just, the same way as breathing meditation, right? Or yoga or the gym. As long as you do it, it's right.
So we've got a couple of minutes left. Something that I was curious to hear a bit more about, and you were just kind of touching on it, is that becoming more deeply in touch with the body, but also more deeply in touch with feelings. Because again, one of the things that, having spoken to a few people about the practice, that was interesting to me as well, was that it's something about learning to experience intensity, and intensity of, I guess it's a sexual energy within on practice, but also that potential in someone's wider life to open up to just experiencing life in a way which is not withdrawing into the mind and kind of pushing life away.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can say about that?
Well, I guess it's one of the things that we really believe in is, so it's instead of like leaning back from life, you're heating up your system, and so you're leaning in towards the fire, right? So you're whatever it is that comes up, keep doing it. And I think that, so one of the things I love about this practice is it's a body-based practice. So your body will open up whatever it's ready to open up when it's ready. So some people are like, I'm going to work on this, and it's like your body's not ready, it's not going to open up. Or you think like, I don't want to think about that at all, and that's what's coming up for you in your oming, and that's where you're at. And so your body will open up and reveal and kind of move through whatever it is. And so I've been doing this 8 years, right? So I'm a coach, and I've been doing this. And before, I used to be a social worker, and you'd meet week by week, and people would be like, I didn't do that thing I said I would do. And now every week they're like, oh my God, everything's changed. You won't believe what's happened to my life. It's insane. And it's like, so it's just like we get the top spinning, and it's just moving. Right. There's just, your life starts taking you. It's like you tapped into something bigger, and you know, like it's, something is taking you. Your body is opening up. You're plugging into life. So for me, this practice is the practice of plugging into life, and then it takes you on a journey. That's an amazing journey.
I really like that. You know, one of the things that I get very suspicious of is spiritual paths where it's like you disengage from life, and it's like, so you learn to be in a place of calmness and spaciousness, disconnected from life. Totally. And that's beautiful what you say about coming into life. And leaning in towards all of the things that make you uncomfortable, you know. So a lot of people have had some trauma in their lives, and this practice itself will really like, it really releases it in a way that you're no longer a victim of it, but you can feel it. Yeah. And so it releases that. Or, you know, whatever it is that comes up for you. Okay, I'm really angry. We often say that one of the first things that happens for women is anger comes up, and it's like, okay, be angry. That's great. You know, we like, people are like, you don't understand what's happening. I'm angry, or I'm crying, or I'm mad. And it's like, that's hot. Great. Whatever it is, lean in towards it, burn through it, go to the next thing. This practice really will just guide you wherever it is you're meant to go. That's really, really beautiful. Thank you, Rachael. Yeah, my pleasure. And for those that are watching, you can find out more at OneTaste.us. And thank you, Rachael. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to talking with you again, hopefully very, very soon. Bye-bye.